Hi guys, welcome back. So today I wanted to go over how to crochet this cute little amigurumi clementine. This clementine pattern is one of my favorites because it's super easy to whip up. It uses really basic stitches and you can pretty much do whatever you want with them, whether it's putting it on a keychain or gifting them away. It's a great pattern. So I'm using two different colors of medium worsted weight yarn. This is also size 4 yarn. So I'm using color blood orange and lime green. I'm also using some size 3 crochet thread, but you can just use black embroidery floss. I'm using a 3.0 millimeter hook with my yarn to make those stitches nice and tight. You'll also need a darning or tapestry needle, some black safety eyes. You could use beads for this too. These are 6 millimeter black safety eyes with their little backings. You'll need a stitch marker as well, or you can just count the stitches, it doesn't matter. Some scissors, and some polyester fiber fill stuffing. You can also just use yarn scraps for this part too. So to start, we're gonna make a magic circle. If you don't know how to make a magic circle, I do have another tutorial for this magic circle method, but I like using the magic circle method instead of the chain 2 and single crochet in second chain from hook method. We're gonna put a magic circle of 6. So this means putting 6 stitches into our magic circle. We'll tighten our loop up to close it up. And then for the next round, we're going to increase into every single stitch. So this means putting 2 stitches into every single stitch. So we had a magic circle of 6. We'll be increasing by 6 to make 12 stitches at the end of the round. So this is what it looks like at the end of the round, and I should have 12 stitches here. I'm just gonna place my stitch marker just so I don't have to count as much, but you can just count your stitches and you'll get to the same place. For the next row, we're going to single crochet and then increase all the way around. So we'll do that 6 times. So we'll do single crochet, increase, single crochet, increase, single crochet, increase, all the way to the very end of the round. We'll do this 6 times, and therefore we're going to increase by 6. So we have 12 stitches at the beginning of our round, and then we add 6 stitches total to give us 18 stitches. This is what it should look like at the very end of your round, and it should have 18 stitches. Place your marker back to make sure you know where the end of your round is, and then you can start your next row. For the next row, we're going to single crochet 2 and then increase into the 3rd stitch. We'll repeat this pattern all the way around, so we should do this 6 times total. This means we're going to be increasing by 6 again, and then we'll have 24 stitches total at the end of the round. So our last stitch should be an increase, so we'll just take off our stitch marker, do the increase, and then put our stitch marker back on. you should have something that looks a little bit like this. So the next part is super easy. All we're gonna do is we're going to single crochet all the way around for 4 rows. So we'll have 24 stitches in each row. We're gonna single crochet those 24 stitches 4 times. So I'm just gonna whip on ahead because all I'm doing is single crocheting and that's kind of boring to watch. But feel free to pause the video until you've finished your 4 rows and then we can meet back up. Okay, so I'm just finishing up the end of my 4th round of straight single crochet. So at the end of the round, I'm just gonna place my stitch marker back. And I just wanted to mention that we want the right side of this piece out. So this is the right side and this is the wrong side. So if you have this side showing, just make sure to invert your piece. It's not necessarily right or wrong, it's just labeled that way. I don't know why it's called this, it just is. So for the next round, we're gonna start our decreases. So we'll do a single crochet 2 and then an invisible decrease. To invisible decrease, we're gonna pick up the front loops only of the next 2 stitches, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through both. All right, so single crochet 2, 1, 2, and then invisible decrease. So pick up the front 2 loops, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through. Single crochet 2, 1, 2, pick up 1 stitch front loop, 1 stitch front loop, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through both. So this invisible decrease, it allows for a tighter stitch and as the name suggests, an invisible decrease. So it doesn't look as holy as single crocheting 2 together. I find this method works really well with amigurumi because it doesn't allow the stuffing to show as much. So I'm just going to continue on single crocheting 2 and then invisible decreasing at the end of the round. So I'm going to have 2 stitches at the end that I'm going to invisible decrease together. There you go. You should have something a little bit like this. So for the next round, we're going to single crochet 1 and then invisible decrease all the way around. So this round, we are decreasing by 6. So at the end of this round, we should have 12 stitches left. So here I am doing the last few stitches. That's a single crochet, and then I'm gonna move my marker off, do an invisible decrease on these last 2 stitches, and then we'll have our 12 stitches. So I don't place my marker back just yet because we're gonna start doing our face now. So I'm gonna take my 6mm safety eyes and I'm just gonna place them in the middle of the piece. I like to place them about 4 holes apart, and I find that that makes them super cute. So I'm just gonna place the backings on them, and then we're gonna put the mouth on. So I just cut a small piece of my crochet thread. You can use embroidery floss for this as well. And then I have my darning needle, which I'm gonna be sewing in. So starting on the inside of the piece, we're gonna go out the hole, that's the middle right hole between the eyes, down a row, into the piece, and then out the middle left hole. So this will create a diagonal line, and then we'll go back into the hole that we went in through previously to make a little V. So now we have our yarn tails on the inside of the piece, and all we're gonna do is create a little knot on the inside to secure them. You can trim the yarn tails here if you would like, but sometimes I just leave them and use them as stuffing. So now we have our little face done. And we're gonna start stuffing the piece. So I like to use polyester fiber fill stuffing, but you can use yarn scraps for this, which is a good idea to just reduce waste. So I like to stuff my pieces quite firmly, so I use several small pieces of the polyfill for this, and I like to try and smooth my pieces of polyfill around the outside and then stuff the middle a little more raggedy, just to make sure that piece is nice and round, rather than having some big divots in it. So after I'm happy with the stuffing, we're gonna finish closing up the piece. So I usually leave my stitch marker off for doing the face, and then I'll put it back on at this point. So for the next row, all we're gonna do is we're gonna invisible decrease all the way around. So we had 12 stitches, and we're gonna decrease, or invisible decrease, 6 times, which should get us back to our magic circle size of 6 stitches. So I'm just gonna invisible decrease all the way around my row until I get to 6 remaining stitches. So this is my last invisible decrease that I have to do. And after this, I'm just gonna pull up a small loop, and then I'm going to trim just enough to sew in and hide that little hole that I have left. So I'm going to use my darning needle at this point. I'll thread my yarn. So to close up the hole that we have left, all we're gonna do is pick up the front loop only of the 6 remaining stitches, and we're just gonna sew through them. So you can see that I'm picking up both loops of the stitch in this one, but we're gonna just grab that front loop only and pull the yarn through. So that's 2 stitches, it's 3, 4, this is our 5th stitch, and our last stitch to close up that hole. So now we're just gonna pull this really tight, and that should close up our little hole here. So to get rid of this yarn tail on the end, all we're gonna do is go into that middle of the hole that we just created, and we're gonna just sew through to the bottom. Pull that a little bit, and now we should have our finished piece. So now we can grab our scissors and trim the yarn tail super close to our piece. So now we finished our body of our little clementine, and I think it looks pretty darn cute. So we're gonna move on to crocheting our little leaf. So to do this, I'm grabbing our green yarn, and I'm just gonna create a slip knot. Just make sure that you leave a long enough tail for sewing in at the very beginning. So from here, we're going to chain 4 stitches. In the second chain from hook, we're going to single crochet. In the next stitch over, we're gonna half double crochet. To do this, we yarn over first, go into the stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn through all stitches on the hook. In the next chain, we're going to double crochet. So we do that by yarning over, picking up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 stitches, and then yarn over, pull through both. So in that same stitch, we're gonna put 2 more double crochets. So yarn over, into the stitch, pick up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through both, and then 1 more in here. So we'll have 3 double crochets at the end of this last chain. So now we're gonna work up the other side of the chain. Okay, so we're gonna put a double crochet into the next little stitch that we see. So a double crochet right here. Yarn over, pick up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through both. In the next stitch over, we'll do a half double crochet. And then in that last little spot that we have, we'll do a single crochet. Now, to make the little pointy bit of our leaf, we'll chain 2 from here. So 1 and then 2. In the second chain from the hook, we're going to put a single crochet. So this makes a nice little point for the top of our leaf. Next, we'll just slip stitch into our first single crochet that we made. Just slip stitch right there. Now I just leave enough of a tail to sew in. So for this next part, we have a little edge that I want to get rid of and kind of smooth out. So I'm going to create an invisible bind off into the next stitch over. So this is our next stitch over, and this is the stitch that we're going to go into. So we'll sew through, and then we'll go into our slip stitch in the back loop only of our slip stitch. And this creates like an invisible stitch that creates the top half of the stitch without the bottom half of the stitch. So it kind of rounds out the piece. So I'm just going to sew my way all the way back down to the base of my leaf so I can sew in this little leaf to the top of the clementine. So once I get near the base of the leaf, I like to sew under both loops of that base of the leaf, just because I feel like it allows for a better effect when I sew it onto the clementine later. So I'm going to take the starting strand that we had from crocheting our leaf, and I'm going to also sew that down to the base of the leaf to meet the other yarn tail. So you can see that with my end yarn tail, I'm coming up through the piece, and then with my start yarn tail, I'm going to go the opposite way and go down through the piece. So I have each yarn tail on either side of the base of the leaf. So now I'm just going to position my leaf in the spot that I want it. I like to kind of tilt my leaf to the side because I think it looks cuter. We're going to take our darning needle again, and we're going to start sewing it on. So just make sure you have the top half of the leaf. I'm going to sew down into the middle of that end hole that we made, and then out through the hole right on the next row out. Make sure that you position your leaf in the right spot, and then make a knot here. I make a few knots just to make sure that it's secured. So now to hide that yarn tail, all I'm gonna do is thread my yarn all the way through the piece and pull it through. Now I'm just going to take the other yarn tail that I have, and we're going to do the same thing to secure it in. So down through that ending hole that we made, and kind of out through the same area as the other one. We'll pick up a small loop underneath the piece, and we'll create a knot to secure it to the base of the clementine. Pull this nice and tight, and then hide the yarn tail through the clementine body. So now we can pick up our scissors and trim off our yarn tails. Just gonna throw these out. So now we have these two little green splotches poking through, which we can just get rid of by squishing the clementine a little bit. And here's where you can add your keychain if you would like. So I have some jump rings and then some keychains that I like to throw the clementines on. And we're just going to go down through that ending hole that we made and attach it through that way. I like to go kind of onto the front side of the piece just because I feel like the clementine looking upwards is a little bit cuter than looking downwards. So I'm just closing up the jump ring here, and I'm just going to move that jump ring so the opening is inside the piece rather than on the outside. So now we have our little clementine on a keychain. I think he looks pretty cute either way, but it's up to you, whatever you'd like. So hopefully you like this pattern. Of course, if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. You can also catch me live on Twitch on twitch.tv/falsebubbles if you want to come ask me questions live there. As always, thank you so much for watching, and feel free to follow me on any of my socials, and I will catch you guys in the next one.